disturbing videos ever caught on camera. This Iceberg chronicles the most harrowing incidents ever captured on camera, from a deranged Uber passenger's clash with the driver to a deadly, catastrophic explosion in a factory claiming multiple lives. We start at level 1, but the deeper we go, the more disturbing and the more unpredictable things become. We begin at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. A road trip spiced with guns. On February 21, 2020, two American YouTuber friends decided to embark on a recreational road trip to Mexico. Aaron Pazant, on his first trip to the country, aimed to fully enjoy the captivating wildlife and observe various bird species. So he brought along his friend Logan Howard, and they hit the road. While driving through quiet forested roads trying to find the right path, their attention was drawn to a vehicle behind them, moving at an alarmingly high speed. The young man grew suspicious of this and even told his friend that the way the car was following them was deeply unsettling.
The car behind us is kind of scaring me how fast they're going. I know, they're going.
But they didn't stop the car and continued driving until the pursuing vehicle finally overtook them and blocked their path. Up to this point, it would be shocking and terrifying enough for anyone to have an unknown vehicle cut them off on a deserted road, even without malicious intent. The story, however, became far more complex and frightening for Aaron and his friend when they realized the people in the vehicle were armed. Within seconds, their path was blocked, and strangers with pointed guns were shouting at them. The atmosphere was intensely volatile, to the point that the two nature-loving young men could barely breathe, unsure of what the right decision was.
Please, what? Please, what? No, Espanol, please. We're just...
What did these armed individuals want in the middle of that deserted road? Unfortunately, Aaron and his friend didn't speak Spanish and could only use gestures and pleas to convey that they were just there for leisure and knew nothing about anything. Fortunately, the armed men quickly became convinced that Logan and Aaron posed no threat and tried to calm them down, apologizing for the incident.
No problem.
What's your name?
Aaron.
But the boys, unaccustomed to having guns pointed at their heads, were so terrified they nearly fainted from fear. After a few minutes, the Mexicans got back into their vehicle and left, but the question remained unanswered. Who were they really? Were they genuinely patrolling to protect the area, or were they criminals who took pity on their victims and let them go? This incident shows that even the most remote places are not devoid of human presence, and a recreational trip can, in a single moment, turn into a desperate struggle for survival. TV broadcast. On a regular day, Allison Parker, a 24-year-old reporter, and Adam Ward, a 27-year-old cameraman, were delivering a live report for WDBJ's morning show. They were interviewing Vicki Gardner, executive director of the local Chamber of Commerce, about the 50th anniversary celebration of Smith Mountain Lake. Allison was asking questions, and Vicki was discussing upcoming events and plans when, suddenly, the screen went black. All that could be heard were screams, shouts, and the sound of gunshots. This was the last time Allison and Adam were seen alive on television. The perpetrator of this tragedy was Vester Lee Flanagan, I.E. Flanagan had been dismissed from his role as a reporter at the station in February 2013 and had a history of conflict at work and rage allegedly fueled by racial grievances. He fled the scene but was eventually cornered by police. Before he could be taken into custody during the chase, he took his own life. Sky crashed down. On February 4, 2015, Lee Chong-min, a 42-year-old driver, recorded something on his car's dashcam that would terrify anyone who saw it. Just like every other morning, he was driving along the Kailung Highway. Lee, a taxi driver, had assisted stranded motorists on that highway countless times, until that day when everything changed. That morning, he was destined to witness a nightmare for millions at the closest possible range. At 10 a.m., out of nowhere, a deep, menacing roar echoed from the sky. After handing the video to the police, Lee recalled, "I thought the world was coming to an end." He immediately braked because the horrifying sound was too close for comfort. Just a few seconds later, he realized that his life had been saved solely by that sudden braking, because the very next moment, an airplane crashed from the sky. The airplane was so near his car that its wings struck the vehicle ahead. The taxi driver in the car before him, a 52-year-old man named Xiong Zhou, stepped out, completely stunned and staring upward before calling the police. He explained that an airplane had just collided with his car, and the authorities initially suspected that a model airplane had hit his vehicle rather than a real one. The airplane then veered off and crashed onto the side of the highway. In earlier footage, you can see that even a tall building was only a few meters away from being obliterated. Li was utterly shocked. Had he braked just a few seconds later, the plane might have collided with him, hurling him into a torrent of fire and smoke. The aircraft, Flight 235 Asia Trans from Taiwan, had crashed shortly after takeoff. After skimming the edge of the highway, it plunged into the Keelung River, and thick, black smoke billowed from the crash site. Cries and screams echoed all around. Of the 58 passengers on board, only 15 survived, while the rest either lost their lives or went missing. Delhi Zoo tragedy. On September 2014, Maksud, an Indian man, visited the Delhi Zoo. Like others, he wandered among the animal enclosures until he reached the white tiger's cage, separated by a short railing and a 2-meter wall. Witnesses later said Maksud glanced around as if checking if anyone was watching. In a matter of minutes, he climbed the railing and entered the tiger's enclosure. Some bystanders shouted, others began filming. Inside the cage, Maksud faced Vijay, the tiger. At first, Vijay only stared, but seconds later his instincts kicked in. He approached Maksud slowly. Maksud, perhaps realizing his mistake, backed against the wall with nowhere to run. The tiger stood before him briefly, then the footage cut off. This was the last time Maksud was seen alive. After the video stopped, Vijay struck Maksud with a single paw, knocking him to the ground. By the time guards arrived, it was too late. The tiger had finished its work. Maksud lay bloodied and lifeless. Speculation arose that Maksud may have had mental health issues, but no one knew why he entered the enclosure. The zoo faced heavy criticism for the cage's weak security, though many noted Maksud had deliberately climbed in. The zoo insisted Vijay wasn't a threat, claiming that Vijay was not a man-eater as he was born and bred in captivity and knew no hunting techniques. Level 2. Wrestling a crocodile with a stroke of luck. On January 1st, 1998, in Miccosukee Indian Village, a tourist park west of Miami, Florida, a terrifying incident unfolded. Kenny Cypress, the 27-year-old master of stunt work and alligator wrestling, had prepared a grand performance that day. Over 200 spectators from across the United States and even international tourists gathered to witness his renowned artistry with alligators and crocodiles. Nicknamed the Gator Wrestler, Kenny had worked with these creatures countless times, making this day seem routine. To the audience, taming a 3-meter, 350-pound crocodile, roughly 160 kilograms, was anything but ordinary, yet for Kenny, it was second nature. After guiding the crocodile around the performance ring, Kenny decided to showcase his signature move, the highlight that drew crowds and justified their ticket prices. With confidence, he pried open the crocodile's jaws, intending to place his head between them. Earlier, the announcer had noted the beast's 80 teeth, a fact that underscored the audacity of inserting a human head into such a deadly maw. Kenny, however, trusted his skill implicitly. Everything seemed under control until, in a split second, an unthinkable mishap stunned the crowd. Scientifically, opening a crocodile's mouth is manageable, but any stimulus touching their tongue triggers an immediate, forceful snap of their jaws. This was the precise cause of the calamity. Footage shows Kenny wiping sweat from his brow with his shirt before the stunt, but he neglected to dry one side of his face thoroughly. As he placed his head inside the crocodile's mouth, a single bead of sweat dripped onto the creature's tongue, prompting its jaws to clamp shut, locking Kenny's head in a vice-like grip. Screams erupted from the crowd, unsure whether this was part of the act or a genuine crisis. The atmosphere turned chaotic, thick with panic. Kenny, later recounting the moment, believed his life was over, his thoughts fixed on his son.
Into my head with my kids, and I guess it pops into everybody's head when they're dying, they think of their kids.
A bystander rushed to pry open the jaws by hand, but failed. A second person tried using a stick, even leveraging their feet, to no avail. The crocodile, tasting blood, now saw Kenny as prey, refusing to release him. Finally, with the aid of 2 more helpers, 4 in total, after a grueling 30 seconds, they overpowered the ravenous beast, freeing Kenny's head. Blood streamed from his temple, his senses dazed as he staggered from the ring for medical attention. Kenny Cypers sustained a fractured jaw and severe wounds to his ear and head. Remarkably, after reaching the hospital, he refused overnight admission and returned to work just 3 days later. He later vowed to his son to avoid high-risk stunts, limiting himself to placing only his hands in crocodiles' mouths henceforth. Fall from the sky. On April 2013, a Boeing 747-400 cargo plane, operated by National Airlines, was preparing to depart from Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan, bound for Dubai. The aircraft, named Lorry, was loaded with heavy cargo, including 5 mine-resistant armored vehicles, weighing a total of 94 tons. The 20-year-old plane, once a passenger jet for Air France, had been converted into a freighter. Before the flight, the crew made a brief stop at Bagram for refueling. During the previous leg, several cargo straps had loosened, and one had even snapped. The loadmaster, aware of this, tightened the loose straps and replaced the broken one, but seemingly failed to ensure everything was properly secured. One of the pilots, with 6,000 hours of flight experience, readied the plane for takeoff. No one imagined the flight would last mere seconds. At 3:30 p.m., the plane lifted off the runway. As it climbed to 1,200 feet, a catastrophic event unfolded. One of the 12-ton armored vehicles broke free, sliding toward the tail. Like a bomb, it smashed into the rear bulkhead, destroying the hydraulic systems. The plane's nose shot upward, as if yanked by an invisible force. The pilots fought to regain control but couldn't. A dashcam captured the moment the plane stalled, banked sharply, and crashed in a fireball. All 7 crew members, 4 pilots, 2 mechanics, and the loadmaster perished. The troublesome Uber passenger. On the night of January 19, 2019, around 9 p.m. in Citrus Heights, California, an Uber driver named Albert Castro accepted a ride request from W.G. Vang, a 32-year-old man, near a bar in South Sacramento. As Vang settled into the car, it became clear his night at the bar had left him heavily intoxicated, his demeanor far from sober. For an experienced Uber driver like Albert, such passengers were commonplace, especially at night, and he resolved to deliver Vang to his destination, despite the man's state. They sped along a highway when Vang began chatting with the driver. At first, his slurred words carried a drunken friendliness, but soon they turned bizarre, laced with an eerie calm as he predicted. "We're going to crash." After repeating this ominous warning, Vang suddenly grabbed the steering wheel with one hand, jerking it violently, only to be met with Albert's swift reaction. Albert sternly warned him not to touch the wheel again, their speed hovering at 65 miles per hour, a reckless move that could have veered them into adjacent lanes, endangering their lives. Miraculously, no crash occurred. Dashcam footage reveals Albert's growing unease, clutching Vang's hand with his right to prevent another attempt while steering with his left. Tension etched Albert's face, while Vang's expression radiated a chilling, carefree serenity. Albert pleaded with Vang to release his hand, but Vang ignored him, repeatedly asking,
Where we at? Mac Road, man. We're going toward Mac Road.
Moments later, Vang lunged again, this time throwing his entire body onto the wheel in a frenzied attempt to swerve the car. The struggle intensified, Albert grappling to maintain control while slowing the vehicle to avert catastrophe. As Vang whispered in his ear, "Bro, I love you, bro, I love you."
I love you, brother. I love you, brother. No, I love you, brother. I love you, brother. You gotta let go, man. I love you, brother.
He murmured with eerie composure, "We're gonna die." Albert, resolute, countered, "We're not gonna die," urging Vang to let go of his hand in the wheel. Finally, Albert managed to pull over, stopping the car and calling the police.
I have a drunk Uber passenger grabbing my steering wheel? No.
After explaining Vang's attempts to derail the vehicle, he provided their location. Minutes later, police arrived, arresting TWG Vang, who was permanently banned from using Uber. Albert Castro, a father of 8 and the breadwinner for a large family, emerged unscathed from this perilous night. Later, he revealed this wasn't his first brush with danger as an Uber driver. Having driven for about 3 years, Castro said it's not the first violent incident he's faced. Castro said he had a gun pulled on him about a year ago. Castro isn't sure if he'll continue driving for Uber after this weekend's incident. The pay is great. Now I have to evaluate whether that's all worth it. Level 3. Mind-blowing scheme. On August 32, 2024, a dashcam driver on the busy streets of Bengaluru captured something that made people say that dashcam drivers in Bengaluru are the real deal. And if you don't have one, you might be facing irreparable damages that could affect you for a lifetime. Even the unknown driver of that car, if his dashcam had been off that day, might have suffered the same fate. The man was heading home like any other night when, suddenly, a woman leapt onto the road from off the pavement, right in front of his car, completely shocked. He reacted in a way that most would when witnessing such a scene. Clearly, the driver tried to brake as hard as he could to avoid hitting the woman, and he managed to stop his car just a few centimeters away from the wild woman who had jumped into the middle of the street, buying himself a brief moment of relief. But that wasn't the end. Shortly after, we see the woman get struck by the car and collapse onto the ground. The driver was almost certain that he hadn't hit her at all, so why was she lying there? As soon as she got up, she flashed a malicious, devilish smile at the driver and blocked the car's path. It appeared she had been waiting for someone, especially the police, to witness how she had been supposedly swindled by the driver, realizing that this was yet another one of those scams in that area. And before anyone could even entertain the slightest misstep, the driver shouted police to alert everyone that the woman had deliberately thrown herself onto his car in an attempt to extort money from him. However, her plan ultimately failed, and the driver managed to escape the scene. Never enter a cave alone. A YouTube channel called The Highway posted a strange video on September 10, 2017. This channel typically recorded and shared adventurous videos in nature, which had many fans, but this particular video titled "Never Go in a Cave" drew more attention than usual. In this video, a man, along with his dog, entered a mysterious cave in an undisclosed location with no additional information provided. From the very start of the video, a quiet, eerie calm, like the stillness before a storm, gripped the viewer, and it seemed the person filming wasn't stepping confidently, carrying a sense of fear. He called his dog several times, sending it ahead to ease his mind. As they progressed, the cave spaces grew narrower and more confined, with the sounds of bats and insects audible. Though many wouldn't have the courage to continue at this point, the adventurous man decided to explore the cave further and keep discovering. A decision that perhaps he shouldn't have made, leading to a disaster. Further along, the man suddenly encountered something suspicious. It appeared he noticed the presence of a human, or at least a figure resembling one, standing in the darkness. The moment he realized this, he turned his camera, spun around, and began running toward the cave's entrance in a panic. While fleeing, he called for his dog to follow and not be left behind. The atmosphere was so uncertain, heavy, and terrifying that he didn't even glance back, unwilling under any circumstances to be caught by that entity. The crux of the matter, however, is that the video suddenly cut off without warning, leaving only a black screen for the viewer. No additional explanation or clarification was provided. Since that day, over 7 years have passed, and the YouTube channel has not posted any new videos or updates, leading fans and followers to speculate widely about what happened that day. Was that shadow merely a hallucination born of fear and stress? Or was there truly a creature or cave-dwelling person lurking there? Even if someone lived there, did they intend to harm the YouTuber? And most importantly, why did the video cut off? Unfortunately, there are no definitive answers to these questions, but one thing is clear: the YouTube channel likely won't be active ever again. Was it due to a terrifying and bitter experience, or simply a decision to abandon adventuring? Or is the YouTuber who filmed for the channel no longer alive? Nightmare in the car. On March 27, 2022, Shackelford Michael was driving through San Antonio, Texas, on what seemed like an ordinary day. All he wanted was to get home and rest, but he had no idea he was about to witness something that would haunt him forever. Out of the corner of his eye, Michael noticed a car passing by. Time seemed to slow as the passenger door of the moving car suddenly swung open. His heart pounded. A frantic woman struggled to climb out mid-traffic. It was clear something horrific was unfolding inside that car. The door kept opening and slamming shut violently as if someone were restraining her. Michael's blood ran cold. He knew if this continued, the woman would be seriously hurt. Acting fast, he immediately called the police.
She's screaming and kicking in the car. He's erratically. She's trying to get out of the car.
But before they could arrive, the car screeched to a halt. The woman managed to leap out and sprint away. Michael shouted, urging her to jump into his car.
Ma'am, get in my truck! Get in my truck!
He drove her to safety, his hands trembling on the wheel. Later, the chilling truth emerged. The woman's husband had been physically assaulting her inside the vehicle. Level 4. The savage man at the door. On February 26, 2023, around 7:30 p.m., Aisha Warris, a 23-year-old woman, walked alone through the streets of Harlesden, northwest London, England, chatting with our friend via FaceTime. A stranger, Gulwali Staniksay, a 22-year-old Afghan man, began following her on his bicycle, sending waves of fear through her. Despite her desperate attempts to escape, she couldn't shake him. When Staniksay caught up, he threw her to the ground, unleashing a brutal assault. Aisha managed to break free, fleeing to a nearby house where she begged for help. The homeowner, in a courageous and compassionate act, opened the door to the bloodied, distraught woman, offering her sanctuary from the monster pursuing her. But Staniksay, undeterred, tracked her to the house. Instead of abandoning his pursuit, he launched a frenzied attack on the front door. The chilling moments of his savage onslaught were captured by the home's doorbell camera. The footage shows Staniksay backing up, charging forward, and relentlessly kicking the door, determined to break it down and finish what he started. He repeated this assault multiple times. Inside, the homeowner dialed 999, but the police, overwhelmed by a Carabao Cup final match at Wembley Stadium that night, couldn't provide an estimated arrival time. Realizing the camera might have recorded him, Staniksay attempted to destroy it with an object before resuming his attack, shattering the door's glass panels, the sound of breaking glass piercing the night. Yet mercifully, he failed to breach the house. Finally, consumed by rage, he abandoned his pursuit and fled. On March 1, 2023, Staniksay was arrested and, per reports, sentenced to 3 years and 1 month in prison for assaulting Aisha and attacking the house. Staniksay came to the UK from Afghanistan in 2016 as an unaccompanied minor, the Mail Online reported. He apologized to his victims through his lawyer. The giant gas. On June 3, 1991, 4 p.m., Mount Unzen in Japan seemed to stir from its long slumber. People fled in terror as what first appeared to be ordinary smoke revealed itself as one of nature's deadliest forces, something so lethal that survival was nearly impossible if it reached you. This wasn't mere smoke, but a searing mix of hot gases, ash, and volcanic rocks, roaring down the mountain at speeds up to 700 kilometers per hour, incinerating everything in its path. The catastrophe stemmed from an eruption of Mount Unzen in southern Japan. The volcano had shown signs of activity since 1990, but on June 3, 1991, a lava flow triggered a surge of these deadly gases. Many who believed they were at a safe distance were caught off guard. Against such a disaster, almost no one stood a chance. When an eruption forced the evacuation of thousands of nearby homes and killed 43 people, among them were the French geologist couple, Maurice and Katia Kraft, renowned for their daring. They always ventured as close as possible to volcanoes to photograph them, but this time, there was no return. Happening on New Year's Day. On New Year's Day, 2020, around midnight, a home surveillance camera in Las Vegas, USA, captured a horrifying scene. A white woman, aged between 20 and 30, wearing torn jeans, ran frantically toward a house, appearing to flee from something or someone, pounding on the door multiple times and pleading for help. Behind her, a black man immediately jumped out of a car and quickly reached the fleeing woman. He slammed her head against the wall with a kick, the impact so severe that it knocked over a Christmas decoration in front of the stranger's house. Ignoring the woman's cries and sobs, the man dragged her on the ground and beat her, eventually lifting her up. In the video, it appears the man angrily berated her for her actions, violently ordering her to get back into the car. Ultimately, he forcibly dragged her into the vehicle, and they drove away. According to the Las Vegas police report, the next morning, the Darnell Rogers, 23 years old, was arrested for and domestic violence, and according to reports, the female victim was found and taken to a safe location. It appears they had a prior relationship, and domestic violence was involved, but the woman was truly fortunate that a random home surveillance camera saved her. Otherwise, it's unclear how much longer she would have had to endure the assailant's beatings and abuse, or whether she might have even lost her life. The wave behind. On March 11, 2011, at 2:45 p.m., Japan experienced the most powerful earthquake in its history, registering 9 on the Richter scale. The quake inflicted irreparable damage on the populace. Yet, this video begins exactly 1 hour after the earthquake, a moment of sheer terror. A man named Mr. Muro was driving through the crowded, traffic-clogged streets when suddenly, water surged up from behind. In just a few seconds, the entire street was flooded. Muro could only watch as towering waves of water advanced toward him, unsure whether he would ever see his family again. Within mere seconds, all the vehicles, including his own, began floating on the rushing water. With control lost by every driver, no one could stop the fierce current from carrying them away. Countless objects floated and smashed into one another, disintegrating upon impact. It soon became evident that, as the water's force increased, the same fate could befall more cars and people. The tsunami was so catastrophic that it generated waves up to 40 meters in length. While the earthquake itself may have lasted only about a minute, the colossal waves showed no signs of stopping, surging ever further into the city and engulfing its inhabitants. Vehicles were battered against anything in their path, as the relentless waters swept them away, overwhelmed by the devastation unfolding before him. Mr. Muro lost all hope and ceased struggling. No one knew what to do, whether to remain in their cars or try to abandon them and swim to safety. In the end, even though the combined forces of the tsunami and earthquake claimed the lives of 18,000 people, Mr. Muro made the crucial decision in that moment. He forced his car door open and managed to escape, saving his own life. Level 5. Tourist at the Grand Canyon. If you're even slightly interested in tourist attractions, you've likely heard of the Grand Canyon. This national park in Arizona, USA, draws millions of tourists annually to the country. In a lifetime, few get the chance to witness the extraordinary landscapes of this region. Thus, those who visit do everything they can to create an unforgettable experience and capture beautiful photos and videos as keepsakes. The unparalleled grandeur of the rocks and canyons, carved through history to the present day, captivates every viewer with its beauty. But nature's beauty always comes with dangers and risks that humans must protect themselves against. On the 3rd day of June 2017, in a video recorded by a tourist, a man is seen so enthralled by the scenery that he crossed the protective barriers set by park officials and sat on a rock at a terrifying height. Other tourists repeatedly warned him to return behind the fences, cautioning that a single slip could lead to a deadly disaster. But, engrossed in the view, he occasionally responded but ignored their advice, creating a highly tense and stressful atmosphere for the concerned onlookers.
Come back.
Oh yeah, I'll come back sometime. Oh, this is fucking beautiful.
It is, but...
It seemed he knew what he was doing and could return safely, but with one wrong step, his foot slipped, and when heads turned, the man was no longer on the rock. Peering into the canyon below, they saw him tumbling downward.
Oh my gosh, we told him to come back up. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We need to call... You have your phone?
While everyone remarked that he should have listened miraculously, the man's fall stopped just at the edge of the final precipice, beyond which only darkness awaited. The crowd immediately contacted emergency services, and a helicopter ultimately rescued him. Remarkably, despite falling about 100 feet, roughly 30 meters, the careless man sustained only minor scratches and bruises, and, unbelievably, survived. However, such incidents are not always so kind to their victims, and the Grand Canyon is the site of similar accidents each year, claiming the lives of people who, in pursuit of a more striking video or photo for their social media, lose their chance to continue living in the real world. Off-duty police officer. On December 8, 2023, Brocuglio Tomas, a 37-year-old man, left his home unaware of the disturbing event that lay ahead. Accompanied by his dog, he was driving downhill Rocky Street when he came to a red light. After a short wait, when the light turned green, Thomas noticed that the car in front showed no sign of moving, remaining stationary. Consequently, he did exactly what many do when stuck behind a car for no apparent reason. He began honking and shouting to prompt it to move. But this action would soon come at a steep cost. Thomas's expression revealed no trace of anger or frustration. He merely seemed a bit rattled by being caught in traffic. He even started cursing without realizing whom he was dealing with until the driver of the car ahead lost control and stepped out. That person turned out to be none other than Alan Ganter, a 37-year-old off-duty policeman. As Alan approached, presenting himself as an officer, he moved to take a photo of Thomas's license plate. When Thomas asked for his badge number, it triggered Alan to attack him with a punch. Just seconds before this confrontation, Thomas's dog began barking as if its instinct had warned him that something was about to go wrong. In addition to the physical assault, Alan threatened Tomas, warning that his behavior was going to land him in serious trouble before leaving the scene. At that moment, Tomas contacted the police and reported the entire incident. On December 12, police arrived at Alan's home to inform him that Tomas had filed a complaint. However, Alan appeared so shocked that it was evident he was completely unaware of the dashcam recording. He even claimed that he intended to press charges against Tomas for his shouting and outbursts. In the end, Alan was merely suspended for 5 days without pay, and nothing further happened to him, a decision that ignited significant outrage on social media, with many asserting that discrimination had taken place. The tragic death of a migrant worker by train. On May 34, 2025, in Mahachai, Samut Sakhon, Thailand, a heart-wrenching tragedy was captured by CCTV. Its footage both haunting and unforgettable. Ma Phu Phu, a 28-year-old woman from Myanmar, was among a group of migrant workers riding in the back of a pickup truck moving through the streets. The vehicle turned right, crossing a road intersected by a railway track. As the truck passed over the rails, nothing seemed amiss until, without warning, the workers hurled themselves from the truck's bed. A high-speed train appeared in the frame, barreling down the tracks just as the truck cleared them. But something was terribly wrong. The train screeched to a halt moments later. The workers who had jumped to the opposite side of the track stood, realizing one of their own was missing. Ma Phu Phu, like her peers, had leaped from the truck in a surge of fear and adrenaline, but unlike the others, she landed directly on the tracks. Before she could rise or even move, the train roared through, crushing her beneath its weight. Rescue teams arrived, searching for her remains. Her body was found near the railway tracks with severe injuries, her lower torso severed. The pickup driver, Mr. Komsan, a 43-year-old transporting 710 Myanmar workers from a factory to their nearby accommodation, recounted hearing the train's horn and noticing his passengers panic as they jumped clear. I believed I had cleared the crossing safely, but I heard a commotion and a horn behind me, so I pulled over. When I got out, I saw what had happened, he said. The crane collapse. On July 14, 1999, around 5:12 p.m. at the Miller Park Stadium construction site, workers in hard hats toiled under the scorching sun. The colossal crane, Big Blue, a 567-ton behemoth with a 170-meter arm, loomed against the sky. It was one of the largest cranes in the world, standing at 567 feet tall and weighing over 2,000 tons. Its task was to hoist a massive 450-ton section of the stadium's roof into place. An Occupational Safety and Health Administration inspector was on site, filming with a handheld camera to document safety compliance. Everything seemed under control, but in a matter of seconds, it all unraveled. The enormous metal roof section, secured by steel cables to the crane, hung ready. Reports noted the wind speed at about 30 kilometers per hour, enough to pose a risk, even for a crane of this magnitude. Yet the project supervisors, seemingly pressed to keep the work on schedule, chose not to halt operations. For a few minutes, things went smoothly. The metal structure rose steadily into the air. Then, Big Blue shuddered violently. A groan of straining metal echoed, cables quivered, and the crane's arm buckled under the combined weight and wind. Workers froze, shouting in panic, but it was too late. No one could believe what they saw. Time seemed to stop. The 450-ton structure swung wildly in the air. Cables snapped one by one, and the crane lurched toward the ground. With a deafening crash, the entire structure plummeted, kicking up a thick cloud of dust. Metal and concrete fragments rained across the site, and the half-built stadium seemed swallowed by a storm. Workers scrambled in terror, some screaming, others stumbling. The camera kept rolling, its footage now blurred by dust and chaos. The disaster claimed the lives of 3 innocent workers: Jerome Starr, Jeffrey Wisher, and William DeGrave. They were inside the crane control cabin, with no chance of escape. 5 others were injured, some with severe fractures, others trapped beneath debris. Firefighters and ambulances rushed to the scene, but the devastation left even the rescuers in shock. The roof section lay shattered across the ground, and Big Blue, one of the world's largest cranes, was utterly destroyed. Reports estimated the financial damage to the Miller Park project at tens of millions of dollars. OSHA's investigation revealed a cascade of catastrophic errors. The wind speed that day exceeded safe limits for lifting such a load. The structure's weight surpassed the crane's capacity. Technical flaws in the crane itself were also noted. Pressure to complete the project on time had driven supervisors to take risks, and the result was heartbreak for several families. Level 6. Escape from the bear's claws. On January 19, 2025 in Carbon County, Pennsylvania, Andrew Neer set out on a Sunday morning to shop for essentials at the Jim Thorpe Market, but an unexpected event unfolded. According to Andrew himself, and as captured by surveillance footage, a black bear suddenly emerged from the trees and charged at him. At that time of year, it was unusual for bears to roam in such a manner in that area, leaving Andrew deeply shocked, and his decision in that moment was to walk slowly, distance himself from the bear, whose house was directly behind the market. The hungry bear, however, did not simply let Andrew go and attacked him, knocking him to the ground. According to the young man, the bear bit his left hand, requiring stitches, and left claw marks on his lower back. In the end, Andrew was extremely fortunate that his neighbor, without hesitation, grabbed a firearm and shot at the bear to drive it away. This action fortunately proved effective, and Andrew Neer survived an incident that could have ended far more tragically. An even greater stroke of luck for the young man was the later discovery that the bear was infected with rabies, a disease that, thankfully, was not transmitted to him. Confrontation with the cartel. March 6, 2020, 9:03 p.m. A road in Tamaulipas, Mexico. A driver was making his way through the dark night. The road was barely lit, with only the street lights and an occasional traffic light casting dim glows. As he approached an intersection, he suddenly saw something that truly terrified him. Several figures appeared in the middle of the road. A black vehicle blocked the way ahead, and armed men were approaching. With a trembling voice, the driver muttered, "Their cartel." He froze for a moment. If he decided to stop, he might never get another breath. Another car stood further down the road. It looked like they were planning what to do with anyone caught between them. The driver was alone in his car. His heart pounded in his chest. Tamaulipas is a place where cartels fight over trafficking routes into Texas, and carjackings or assaults on drivers are among the most common ways they make money or intimidate people. In this region, every driver is at risk. One wrong turn could mean facing a scene like this, and there's no guarantee of making it back home alive. In 2020, the top leader of one cartel was killed in one of these violent clashes, escalating the already brutal conflicts in the area. At that time, U.S. authorities issued travel warnings, but this driver either didn't hear them or didn't take them seriously enough. As the driver reversed, it became clear it wasn't just one car. Several cartel vehicles had surrounded the area. More armed men were stepping out of their vehicles, trying to block the road completely. The driver reacted quickly, forcing his car to move and attempting to slip through the tightening net of cartel vehicles, all while being watched closely. He managed to maneuver his car through the chaos, even as fear gripped every inch of his body. After this video surfaced, many viewers were furious, believing the driver should have fought back. But fear can paralyze you, and sometimes survival is the only goal. Fortunately, this driver made it out, but not everyone in Tamaulipas gets that lucky. Compassionate mother. More compassionate police. On March 29, 2023, in New Mexico, police received a call from an individual reporting that a woman, Jessica Trujillo, was driving drunk with 2 young children. The caller explained to the police that, at a friend's request, they had intended to drive the woman and her children home because her intoxicated state made driving dangerous. But halfway there, the drunken woman, with vulgar insults and physical aggression, forced the caller out of the car and drove off with the children, prompting the report to the police. Fortunately, the police quickly tracked down the vehicle, and the fleeing driver pulled over to let the officers approach. The officer approached Jessica and asked her to lower the rear window to ensure the children's safety. The officer then explained the report of her drunk driving and asked her to step out of the vehicle and provide an explanation. But she paid little attention to the officer's words, claiming she was close to home and had not consumed alcohol while frantically trying to call someone.
No, I am more concerned with your kids' welfare.
Well, I'm almost home.
Where is home?
Right here on.
Okay. Would you mind stepping out of the car for me? You can leave the windows down so you can hear them. Step to the front of your vehicle, okay?
Jessica finally stepped out of the car but kept complaining about her tough day and difficult life amid the officer's questions. Though the officer could clearly smell alcohol, Jessica continued to deny drinking and even agreed to take a sobriety test. For the test, she lifted one leg, but after counting to 4 seconds, she couldn't maintain her balance, confirming to the police that she had consumed excessive alcohol. Yet, she persisted in denying it.
Consume something.
No, you asked. What do you want to tell you, 0?
The inconsistencies in her statements led the officer to decide to arrest her, but she refused to contact a family member to take custody of the children. The situation grew more tense with Jessica's crying, wailing, and vulgar language toward the officers.
You're not trying to take care of. You're just
I'm trying.
She was guided toward the police car, but Jessica resisted cooperation and stubbornness at every step, even arguing verbally while being placed in the police vehicle. Amid this, the drunken mother tearfully apologized to her children, telling them she loved them while hurling insults at the police, claiming they couldn't care for her children and that nothing mattered to them. Jessica stepped out of the police car again and refused to provide contact information for a family member to take the children. The situation, though simple, became increasingly complicated due to the suspect's behavior. While Jessica finally agreed to name someone to take the children, other officers tried to distract the children to shield them from their mother's distressing moments. Jessica was then taken to the police station, but even there, she didn't stop her shouting, vulgar language, crying, and lamenting about her life. In her statements, she described herself as always having been a happy, cheerful person, never imagining her life would come to this. Perhaps fate had not been kind to Jessica's life, and she wasn't entirely to blame for these events, but the police had to follow protocol. 2 hours after the initial encounter, around 9 p.m., Jessica was transferred to a detention facility on charges of drunk driving and child endangerment. Level 7. A fall during a mountain hike. On March 4th, 2022, in the mountainous region of Wuyi near Nanping, Fujian, in southern China, a tragic incident unfolded, its footage spreading virally online. A man, hiking with a group in this rugged terrain, suffered a devastating accident. The specific trail, a steep cliffside path with no guardrails or ropes, demanded extreme caution from hikers. The route featured a series of steps followed by a narrow, treacherous section where climbers had to slide across the ground in a seated position. Navigating such a perilous path without safety equipment was a grave oversight, one that would soon ensnare the young man. Carrying a backpack, He was the last in his group visible on camera, descending the steps carefully as others had done, everything appearing routine. But in a fleeting moment, disaster struck. His foot slipped, shattering his balance, and unable to land on his feet. He fell chest first, sliding uncontrollably off the cliff's edge and plummeting into the ravine below. Reports indicate he fell approximately 33 feet, roughly 10 meters, sustaining injuries to his legs. Rescue teams, including 12 firefighters, rushed to the scene, embarking on a grueling 6-hour operation to extract him from the dense forest and mountainside. He was eventually transported by ambulance to a local hospital for treatment. Fortunately, his injuries were not life-threatening, and he survived the ordeal. Fake plot gone wrong. On March 2, 2025, 22-year-old Charlie Taylor made a reckless choice. He got behind the wheel after a night of heavy drinking. By 8 a.m., the roads were empty, so if anything went wrong that day, the only witness would be his car's dashcam. Charlie wasn't just intoxicated. He was barely awake. In that state, even a split-second mistake could spiral into disaster. And it did. In a flash, he lost control. The car veered wildly, skidding off the road with a deafening screech. Everything happened too fast. Charlie's screams, the crunch of tree branches, and a thunderous boom as the car plowed into a private farm, leaving destruction in its wake. But the nightmare wasn't over. Terrified and clueless about what to do next, Charlie fumbled for his phone. He called a friend, claiming he'd abandoned the car and reported stolen, pinning the damage on a made-up thief. The lie worked. For a while. What Charlie forgot? The dashcam never stops rolling. When police found the car, they uncovered the unedited footage. Every swerve, every scream, every desperate choice was laid bare. The camera and Charlie himself had sealed his fate. Trapped in court, he confessed. The verdict: guilty. Big Spring. On June 6, 2019, in the city of Big Spring, Texas, while everything seemed calm, a severe storm suddenly swept into the town. An unknown individual, parked by the roadside in their vehicle, noticed the changing weather and dust, pulled out their camera, got out of the car, and was confronted with a scene straight out of an apocalyptic movie. They could barely see 100 meters ahead with relative clarity, and beyond that, everything was swallowed by a brown whirlwind. The person seized the opportunity and continued filming before the storm got too close. Time and again during the recording, they expressed their shock and fear in a relatively quiet, stunned voice. Perhaps their mind was so overwhelmed that they didn't know whether to turn off the camera and flee, or stand there immersed in the terrifying majesty before them. No sound could be heard except the fierce howl of the wind, and the storm grew closer moment by moment, trees and distant cars becoming hazier, the sound more ominous. The filmmaker's breath was caught in their chest. Finally, they managed to snap out of the shock enough to decide to return to their truck and continue recording from inside the vehicle. Just seconds later, the storm came so close that the air turned completely black, as if hours had passed midnight. The only light visible in the video came from a nearby shed, while absolute darkness enveloped everything else. Out of fear, the person even decided to fasten their seatbelt to ensure no harm would come to them. The video, a short clip from an anonymous individual, doesn't provide detailed or precise information like a news report. But sometimes, it's the very mystery of natural disasters that makes them all the more terrifying. What can an ordinary person do when faced with such an event just meters away? What questions do they have about the origin or cause of the incident? Do those reasons even matter? Or is the only thing that matters escaping that vague, terrifying darkness alive? There were people there who, minutes before the filmmaker, experienced that absolute darkness, and others who would experience it minutes later. But the common question for all of them was, will I see the light again? Landslide. On May 12, 2015, in a region called Dunshin, Nepal, people were going about their daily routines as usual. Then, suddenly, they felt the ground beneath their feet tremble. The shaking grew stronger with each passing moment. At noon, an earthquake measuring 7.9 on the Richter scale rocked Nepal, claiming nearly 9,000 lives. But that wasn't the end of the deadly events in Nepal that year. Just 1 week later, a powerful aftershock caused even greater devastation. This aftershock triggered a massive chunk of the mountain, laden with soil and rock, to break loose and tumble down. The earth under people's feet was collapsing entirely, dragging homes along with it. In mere seconds, houses were buried under a deluge of earth and stone. The aftershock took around 200 lives and injured over 2,500. The earthquake and subsequent landslide led geologists to warn that such landslides were now more likely in the region. The mountains had cracked, and the soil was no longer as stable as before. The threat of another catastrophic landslide looms, and the people of the area live under its shadow.